Let's look at some of the important Bootstrap classes for styling our forms. Now we already saw the container class, and this is what adds a margin to both sides of the page, so it effectively centers the page within the browser. And you can place this directly on the body element to make sure that the whole page gets centered. The form-group class is used within forms to group together a label and the input field. This will help make sure that the page stays responsive and the correct Bootstrap styling gets applied. The form-control class is used directly on input elements. This also helps make sure that mostly text-based elements stay responsive and take up the full width of the container. So let's take a look at how these three classes are used. If we go into index.html, we can see here's where we placed the container earlier, directly on the body tag. And then going into our eftemplate.html file, I'll close this panel so we can see the whole form. And you can see how for our first input field, which is full name, we wrap this along with its label inside this div. And the div gets a class of form-group. And this is a pattern that you'll see throughout the form. The text area field is also text-based, so that gets its own form group. And the same with the select tag. That gets its own form group. And as we go down further in the form, it's not as important on the checkboxes and radio buttons, since those are small enough to be responsive by themselves. So when we run this, we can see how the label and the text field get drawn together, and there's a little bit more of a gap between text fields. So in addition to the form group class, we also have a form control class, which gets put directly on the input element. And this form control also gives it responsive styling, and for text fields makes it take up 100% of the width. If we take this out, we can see that the text field is back to its original Internet Explorer styling. And with it in, it takes the full width of the screen and it looks nice with the label, and it stays responsive. As we shrink the form, the margins are still fine. So for this regular form where the items are listed vertically up and down the page, this is a very common pattern. You wrap everything in a container, and then you wrap your text-based elements in form group classes, and your inputs will have form control classes applied to them.